So, guys, fight commentary breakdowns. We got a second talk with George Francis. If you guys remember, in 2018, we talked to him. Now, fight commentary breakdowns grown, and of course, Fighters Rep has grown. So, first of all, congrats on all the successes. Congrats on all these events, George Francis.
Thank you, man. I could say the same thing about you. You've done a fantastic job, and I love the way that you kind of break the fights down and bring in the traditional martial artists and bring a whole new set of eyes, which is kind of strange, right? You would think traditional martial artists would be, more or have more affinity towards the combat sports, but for whatever reason, they've done a job in their marketing that kind of pushed them away. But you're people like you kind of bring them back in, so I really appreciate that. I love what you're doing, man.
Yeah, thank you. And part of how we got back in touch again was that I basically sent George an email. I said, George, I bet there are some traditional martial artists that test themselves in your league. And he's like, yeah. And then that's how I was like, because I always wanted to cover Fighters Rep more. And then it just happened this way. And
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of talent on your league, man, it's amazing. So, first of all, congrats on getting all these cool people, including Anderson Silva's son, to come fight for you guys. I mean, you guys have been doing a great job outreaching.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Actually, both of his sons fought for us, and they had a decent amateur career with us, and now they've moved on to boxing, which I think, it kind of goes to show you you don't have to just do amateur boxing to become a boxer. You don't have to be in one combat sport your entire life. You can kind of move around. I think Francis Ngannou showed us that, right, in his most recent outing against Tyson Fury. So even though it's the preferred route, it's not always the necessary route. And I appreciate the kind words, man. I've been working hard, and I do think we have definitely the most talented, especially in the amateur side of things, the most talented strikers on the
Yeah,
planet, really.
exactly. And I like how you guys market yourself because there's other, you could call them competitors in LA, but they are Muay Thai, right? So it's like because they call themselves a Muay Thai competition, they're basically only going to attract Muay Thai. But you guys, don't just call yourselves Muay Thai. So it attracts a lot more people.
Right, right. Well, we only do kickboxing, and that's what
Hmm.
makes us different, right? We in our first ever event, we did a mix of rule sets, but for me, it showed me that, you know, it confused a lot of people. It confused the fans. It confused the officials even. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to stick to one rule set that I really love. I kind of, want to be different. And so I went with the kickboxing rule set, pure kickboxing. So, I mean, we do have clinch, but it's only a 3 to 5 second active clinch. You can catch, counter, and then you got to release. So the action never stops, whereas especially in an amateur Muay Thai bout, right? I mean, it's only 2 minute rounds. You can clinch the guy the whole time. You could essentially just have a clinching match for 6 minutes. So not something I wanted to do. And I think we've invested a little bit more in the social media side of things and creating documentaries. And we also do pro-ams. So we don't just do amateur fights. So we're, bringing up the veteran pros, the younger pros. So, it's definitely a different formula,
Yeah.
and I think it's working for us.
Yeah, and exactly to talk about how you've invested in social media. I mean, your Instagram's doing well, and then your YouTube channel has got a following. And for those of you watching, I mean, of course, I'm going to still cover you guys always, but if you guys see
Yeah.
this talk, I hope you guys subscribe because, the people who follow fight commentary chats are a little different than fight commentary breakdown. So everyone that watches fight commentary chats, go follow Fighters Rep, man. This,
I
like, you
appreciate
guys
it.
are doing an amazing job with your marketing. So I don't know if it's you or your team. I mean, it's great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's a mix. I have a team of guys, great guys, Adam, Hike, big shout out to them. But yeah, I definitely, I pitch in, I tell them what I'm looking for, and they make it happen. We also got a new guy named Nick who does
Mhm.
great, great video work, a fantastic photographer known on Instagram as I Capture Violence. You guys can definitely check him out, Curtis Havens. He's amazing. So yeah, I mean, I got a great team of guys around me that have a love for for combat sports, and they want to see it grow, and they know if it grows, they grow, and we all grow, and it's a good thing.
Exactly. So, since last time we covered you, obviously there's the big elephant in the room, the thing that rhymes with Lady Rona, right? That happened How did that affect operations for you guys? I'm sure it shut the world down, of course. So you had a period where you had to get through it. So tell me about that challenge and how you got through it.
What I did, Jerry, was, I needed to do something because the state of California had shut us down so hard that we were unable to put shows together. I mean, they would allow you to put a show together if you abided by their COVID protocols, which were, next to impossible for anyone other than, a multi-million dollar, billion-dollar company like the UFC or something like that. So it was just impossible to do business. So I shifted gears into building the YouTube channel. I just started talking about the fight stuff, and that's kind of what Trip was about at the outset, right? Just interviewing fighters and talking about the fight game, kind of like what you're doing. And I built a bit of a fan base on YouTube so that when we did get back, we could hit the ground running, and that's what we did. As soon as we got back, we started putting shows together, and it was, I mean, they were all great shows, especially immediately after COVID. There was like a real fervor for people to kind of get out there and watch some fights. And so we did really good numbers immediately after COVID, but
Hmm.
now it's kind of normalized. I mean, we're still doing great numbers, obviously, because the brand is growing, but it's normalized. Like, you don't have the same desire for people to get out like it was during COVID. It was like people were starved for entertainment during COVID, which was it was a very different thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm sort of at that point too. I remember under the 2020, 2021, and 2022, every day I didn't care. Like people would yell at me for not being inside, or I didn't care. I needed to be out. But now that everything's quote unquote normalized, like society's accepted that the thing's gone away, I don't feel the need to go outside as much anymore. I'm like more indoors now. It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
Like my mind works opposite of everyone.
and that's probably why you're so successful. You're doing so well, Jerry. I mean, look how many subscribers you have.
Yeah.
Really amazing job, and congrats to you, man. I'm really happy for you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's talk about. So, I think now you're doing more events, right? Than let's say when we talked in 2018 or 2019. Like you've been busy, kind of. It feels like every 2 months, or you guys have an event, right?
Yeah, something like that. I aim for every 2.5, 3 months. Now I'm trying to spread it to three,
Mm-hmm.
which gives me a little bit more time to promote, but it also allows me to expand. So I mean, the idea is we're trying to do shows in South Florida now, which is my homeland. I moved back here, but we're still going to be doing shows on both coasts. So we're going to have 4 shows in California. We're going to have 4 shows, hopefully in Florida, and then maybe at some point we find another state to expand to. Because the sport of kickboxing, I mean, my opinion, the most exciting sport in the world. Guys stand up, they fight. There's hardly any holding. If there is, it has to be active. And we're floating at something like, really, Jerry, something like close to a 50% knockout ratio. I mean, people really go out there and try to get the finish at Fighters Rep. It's almost kind of like watching college football versus regular football. I mean, they want to make a name for themselves. They want to get out there. They want to get the finish. So, plus the rule set helps make it exciting.
Yeah, and I'm really excited hearing that you will start holding events in South Florida. Like that is awesome because as we know, there's a lot of talent in Florida in that area. There's a lot of jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of MMA, and even a lot of UFC fighters are from
Yeah.
Florida. So we have a lot of people there. I mean, Florida is just one of those states. So this is awesome that we're gonna start seeing talent from Florida.
Yeah, yeah. We actually flew a guy out from Miami to fight for the 185-pound title at Fighters Rep 20, which was the last event, just not even a month ago. So, and it was a fantastic fight. I mean, it really got the people up. It was basically Los Angeles versus Miami. It was specifically like Long Beach versus Miami. So
Ooh.
it was a very exciting little buzz built from that. And I hope to continue doing stuff like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Because as you build up the talent on the East Coast and the West Coast, you can have clash events where it's just like the whole event is the winners or the contenders from both sides taking each other on.
And then it's great too, Jerry, because you can fly people in, right? Like from, different parts of the country. I mean, you know, in at the last Fighters Rep, and we had kids come in from Vegas. We had two guys flying from Vegas. We had that kid flying from Miami. We had one come down from Fresno. So, you know, when you're a bi-coastal, you know, maybe now you could pull from New York, Virginia, you know, different places like that, Texas, you know, so it just makes it a bit easier to get more talent on board. You know, it expands the talent pool, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the other leagues I cover, like Street Beefs and stuff, they get people coming in from everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
exactly, it's just like,
You know what's funny? It's funny you mentioned Street Beefs because Free Smoke, do you know Free Smoke? I don't know if you know. He fought on this last event. He's the one from Vegas that I'm talking about, Isaac
oh,
McCary. Yeah, he's one of them, Free Smoke. And the other one is Michael Mook Mitchell. He's actually from Southern California, but he also came up through Street Beefs and he had a great performance at our last event as well. So we've got a couple guys from Street Beefs that have gone on to, you know, treat this as a real fighting career and want to become, you know, pros in Muay Thai or kickboxing or MMA or whatever it is. And they're, you know, they're working with us in the kickboxing front.
that's amazing. And I guess I'm definitely going to check out those two matches from the last event. So the question then is, you got this good kickboxing thing going. Will you eventually, let's say in your events, hold some other matches besides kickboxing, or do you think kickboxing is just the thing for now?
No, no, I think kickboxing is the thing. I think it's the greatest sport in the world. Like I said, there's not really any holding or grappling. People just got to stand and fight. I think the casual fan understands it, you know, as easily as they understand boxing. So it's attractive to them. I think when people go to a UFC event or an MMA event, the fights they enjoy the most are when the guys are standing up and exchanging. Um, and I think even the hardcore fans, they can appreciate the sweet science of kickboxing. You know, we talk about boxing being the sweet science. Well, now imagine adding two more limbs. So, you know, it's the sweeter science or the sweetest science, if you ask me. And you know, I just think there's a huge market for it. It's just nobody's taking the time to really bring it to the forefront. And that's what we're trying to do. You know, that's why I appreciate this interview, Jerry, for you to shine some light on the sport. And I do think for traditional martial artists, it's the best way to get into the fight game. It really is. Like I've told you before, you know, I see you cover these traditional martial artists in other leagues, and I'm just like, oh my God, if Jerry were just to come see, you know, for instance, Michael Claycomb or Chaz Lewis or any of these guys, you know, these are all traditional martial artists. And even, you know, even some of the you know, higher level guys and pros and whatnot. I mean, a lot of them have like a karate base or some sort of base that's helped them move along in the fight game. So it's definitely something that you'll see a lot more of in kickboxing, which is why, you know, I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, and that goes into a really good segue. How do you outreach and find talent? Because you seem to be able to get a lot of these traditional martial artists to come fight for their league. So, what is it? Is it word of mouth? Is it through your social media? Is it a mixture of all these techniques? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, right. And I forgot to mention Mario. We have a kid by the name of Mario who's a Jeet Kune Do fighter. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of, you know, there's a ton of different traditional martial arts. Look, you know, California especially is just inundated with traditional martial arts. You know, it's you know it's the West Coast. You know, we have, my goodness, the man who may have brought Muay Thai into the United States, you know, in Omri over there in Long Beach Kickboxing Center, you know, he's one of the pioneers. You know, you have Jorge Sarate out of Los Angeles Muay Thai. I mean, we work with all these people, you know, so
Mm,
these are people that, you know, brought these sports over. I mean, I work with a coach named Pot Chanarith Pot, who's, you know, he's of Cambodian descent. His father taught him, you know, Pradal Saray, you know, Cambodian kickboxing. Basically, you know, a lot of people argue that's where Muay Thai actually came from. You know, you've got some, you know, back and forth on that, but you know, that's their side of the story, and they're sticking to it. And you can see, you know, you can see. I mean, these are ancient techniques and ancient martial arts, and they're in almost every city in Los Angeles. You'll find something like this, and then of course we've got a very strong boxing culture. as well in Los Angeles. And these people get together and they incorporate, and then, we've got fantastic fighters that, they're from Los Angeles. So, we just, or from California in general. So we just, we put our stuff out there on social media. We let people know we're matching. My matchmaker, Hung Nevo, big shout out to Hung. He's, he owns Hardworks Fitness in Long Beach. He's got some of the best, most professional fighters that I've ever dealt with. And that's why, I decided to work with him and try to get him to become my matchmaker. And I'm lucky that he did. And he's from Team Oyama. I mean, that's his lineage. Colin Oyama is the guy who trained him to be a fighter. And he's just, continuing that lineage. So, we just put stuff out there. We have connections through guys like Hung and just myself reaching out to so many gyms in the past. And you build a network, just kind of like how you have with Fight Commentary Breakdown and everything else. And it makes it easier when you have this network. You put something out there and people reach back out.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess this is a good point to ask. We've probably talked about this back in 2018, but it's good to kind of ask you this question again. How did you get into all this? I think you
Yeah.
probably explained it, but it's been so many years. We might as well talk about it again. So, how did you get
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
fight
I
game?
hear you. I hear you. Well, I grew up playing sports my entire life. My family loved the fighting. I was huge. I was a huge fan of fighting. My uncle was like obsessed with Bruce Lee. We were always watching Bruce Lee movies and this and that. And then we were always watching boxing. And my father was actually he did Taekwondo and Greco-Roman wrestling. And so, I grew up playing sports. Eventually, I did some training. I had a couple goofy fights, like one in a backyard somewhere, like a smoker at a gym one time, but nothing serious. But, I was enamored by the fight game. And, and then I became an attorney, and it was really depressing for a while. So I was looking for something to cheer me up, if I'm being honest. It sounds ridiculous, Jerry, but I was just a miserable young attorney looking for something to cheer me up, thinking to myself, this can't be it for me. There's got to be something else out there that I can do to make myself happy and make others happy and do something I enjoy. And I just started interviewing fighters, and then one thing led to another, and someone asked me to be a ring announcer at their fights. And I started doing that and getting paid for it a little bit. And then, I watched some of these promotions go up and go under and go down. And I thought to myself, hey, I feel like I could do this better. I feel like I could do a better job than a lot of these people. I love the sport of kickboxing. My family, they're of Middle Eastern descent. It's a big deal over there, kickboxing and fighting. They love it. People like Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, they're like gods over there,
Wow.
but, and then we have Better Hari and a lot of these Arab and Middle Eastern fighters. And it's just something that was very inspiring to me. And I said, this is the sport I love. This is the sport I'm going to promote. And I didn't want to be a show that mixed rule sets. I saw the confusion that creates. I don't believe that allows you to create an identity for yourself, and I wanted my identity to be kickboxing.
That makes sense. So very early on, you kind of decided, okay, that like a lot of it's so funny to see parallels in, let's say you want to build a YouTube channel, right? It's the same thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if I were building fight commentary breakdowns, and I learned very early, nobody cares about jujitsu commentary. So if I had to commentate jujitsu or wrestling, even though it's awesome, I have to put it on a different channel. It's exactly kind
Yeah.
of the same thing. So that's why fight commentary breakdowns, for everyone watching, they know now, like it's gonna be like almost freak show, but not completely freak show. It's like style versus style, just like the obscure gems that you're never gonna find elsewhere, because the channel is a little bit not too mainstream, and that's good. That's where we shine, right? So
Yeah.
I realized that early, because I even in the beginning sometimes would try to cover UFC, but it's like the audience don't want that. They can go to other channels to look at UFC. They want to go to find how Jerry can find that one league in Germany or the one league in China, So like it's the same thing. I guess you really have
Yeah.
to be like, this is my identity. And you can always create other identities, but don't mix that with your current identity.
Right, 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 right. And in the beginning, when I first got started, it's out of just trying to get my foot in the door, we started with an MMA show. And the reason we did that is because I was announcing at an MMA show and I got to know the commission. And it was the only commission I knew of at the time.
Mm,
I had just gotten to California and it's CAMO is the acronym,
that's
the
right.
California Amateur Mixed Martial Arts Organization. I believe it's what it stands for.
Yeah.
And so the first few shows we did were MMA and they were great, but then I said to myself, I know the fans love MMA. I know the people in California love MMA, but I got to be true to myself. I want to do kickboxing. And then I kept doing research and I found out that the IKF was the sanctioning body for amateur, striking sports in California. So I discovered by doing MMA first, the other commission was the IKF. And then one thing kind of led to another. And like I said, my first show, I experimented with Muay Thai, kickboxing, and modified Muay Thai, all three rule sets in one show. And I said, you know what? Kickboxing is the one for me. It's the most, for me, it's the easiest to understand. It's the least confusing and it's the most exciting. So, and the
Yeah.
pace is just crazy. The pace at our show is just, it's nuts. And a lot of Muay Thai fighters will tell you, because they're not just standing around going like this, the pace of kickboxing is just, it's almost double, if you ask me. So I just really like the pacing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think a question that some viewers might have, some of your matches, the people have the headgear, and some of them they don't have the headgear. Are the
Right, right.
non-headgear matches like title fights, or they're what you would call the pro amateur fights?
Right, right. So pro-am, just so everybody understands, pro-am just means there's pros and amateurs on the same card,
I
right? And
see.
so that's always a good idea, I think, because again, kickboxing has kind of been left to languish over the past few decades. And so I have to build this thing up again. And so we put the pros on the top, and then we put the real high quality Amis underneath them. And that's a pro-am. Now, as far as headgear goes, only amateurs that have less than 4 fights have to wear headgear in the state of California, right?
Okay.
So if you've already had 3 fights, you're going into your fourth fight, then you can take off the headgear and the shin guards and you can fight without it. Um, in Florida, it's a little bit different. It changes from state to state, so that's going to be a little bit of a hurdle to get over. But we'll figure it out, and we have figured it out. In Florida, you don't even need to wear headgear
Wow.
at all. You can just wear, but all amateurs have to wear shin guards. They don't let you remove the shin guards. So California is different, in that they make you wear the headgear for 3 fights and the shin guards, and then you could remove both. In Florida, you don't ever have to wear the headgear, but you always have to wear the shin guards.
Wow.
So a little bit different, but that's kind of it. And if you're an amateur, you've had 3 bouts. You're going into your fourth bout, and your opponent has also had 3 bouts. They're going into their fourth or fifth or whatever it is. If you guys both want to fight without headgear, you will, and most people want to. Now, once in a while, you might run into a camp that says, "Well, we want to wear shin guards or we want to wear headgear," and then if both sides agree to it, I'll let it happen. But typically, from what I've seen, and this is a great subject, this is a great topic that you might want to talk about on your channel for the fans. Fighters hate headgear. They absolutely hate headgear. They despise it, and so the majority will tell me, "No, we don't want headgear."
Yeah, yeah. Um, the only exception I've ever seen, Wyatt, who's been on my channel, in one of his amateur boxing matches, he said
Yeah.
just by luck, the headgear fit his face perfectly. So he didn't feel squeezed, he didn't feel a
I
lack of
see.
vision, but that's one in like 2,000 chance, right?
Right.
Usually the headgear just adds weight, it limits your vision, it also squeezes your face in weird areas,
Yeah.
and it,
Yeah.
of course, we all know it doesn't prevent concussions. So most fighters are just like, nope, we're not gonna wear it.
Yeah. 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 I actually, Jerry, it's interesting you bring this up. I had a sit down with the executive officer, the head of the California State Athletic Commission, Andy Foster.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to increase the amount of bouts before you could remove the headgear to 5.
Ooh.
And everybody was up in arms and everybody was complaining and everybody was whining on social media. And as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, I'm the only one that reached out to him and said, let's have a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to him. We had a great meeting. I showed him the science, right? Which there is a study on headgear. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but there was a study conducted on headgear that actually showed that it caused more brain injury than without headgear. The only thing it prevented was cuts
Yeah.
more than if you're not going to wear headgear. So I showed him the science based on some of the things you said. It's disabling your vision a little bit. You've got a larger surface area to hit. People feel like they could fight a bit more recklessly because they think they're protected. There were a lot of hypotheses on why, but it was definitely shown to cause more brain injuries and concussions and so forth than no headgear. So I showed him that. I also told him, and listen, people are going to lie about their record regardless if they want to fight without headgear. You're just going to have to police this sabor. And I made a lot of arguments, but I think the main one was it causes more head injury, more brain injury, and so he decided, the commission decided to keep it at 3. And I was very proud of that, because I want to say I was the only one that opened up my mouth to them about it directly, as opposed to just like, spouting off on social media.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Some of the attorney experience you had probably gave you that confidence, that courage to do it. And I want to encourage everyone, like, that's the key, right? If there's anything, try to communicate directly with them. It's so
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
Even funny enough, during 2020 and 2021 under the COVID, I would call the senators, I would call the city hall. I did all
yeah.
that. I talked to them a lot.
Good on you, man.
Because I was like, there's everyone complaining. There's some people just doing civil disobedience, or some people obeying, right? I was like, why don't I have a conversation and ask them what do they think, right? And then, so for
Yeah,
example, I cover a lot of stuff in China, and I told everyone that I could get a hold of in the different parts of the government. I told them in China, like, some of their COVID protocols were less stringent than California. Now, like, I told them, and they were like, huh? I'm like, yeah, dude. Sometimes you gotta look at other countries that we consider authoritarian, see where they set the bar. Because if we're crossing them, I think we're going a little overboard, right? Sometimes you need
yeah,
to give them
yeah.
different views like that. Like, give them some evidence and tell them, hey, this is some of what the world says, and you decide, right? You don't try to yell too much on social media. It's important to get it out of your system, but the direct communication is sometimes the best thing to do.
Oh, I agree. I think it's always the best thing to do. I mean, if you're not going to sit there and talk to people and try to figure it out, then what are we really doing here? I mean, I think you need to eliminate your ego from situations like that can really affect people, and the only way to do that is to actually sit down and have a conversation with them. And, I want to say, having spoken to Andy Foster, I mean, I feel like he's quite reasonable, and I really appreciate his time. And every time I reach out to him, he's responsive. Um, and I think that's the way to do it. You got to sit down with the person and try to figure it out. And, he's like everyone else, he just wants what's best for well, I mean, I won't say like everyone else, but everyone within reason, right? He just wants what's best for the fighters and everything else. So it worked out wonderfully.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm writing his name down so I can.
Now, I did actually try to completely eliminate. I did try to convince him. I think you should just get rid of headgear altogether because look, it's proven to cause more concussions. And the interesting thing about that study, and I'm sure you could look it up, or I could link it to you if you want, Jerry, is that study is what I believe AIBA conducted it, which is like the International Boxing Association. And I believe that's the study that prompted men's Olympic boxing to do away with headgear.
Wow.
And I think it was done in 2016 or 2017, and they just got rid of the headgear. They just
Yeah.
said no more. We're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, I think the thing about sort of these studies is once we get 2 or 3 more of them, I think that's where the tipping point is going to happen. So I
Yeah.
think I want to encourage science-minded people do more of these studies, publish a few more, and then we got a preponderance of evidence to show people.
And listen, I think it was a pretty thorough one too, Jerry. I want to say like 10,000 rounds or something like
Wow.
that, or 10,000 fighters. It was something significant. So definitely check it out when you get a
Yeah,
chance
I
for
will.
sure.
I mean, that sounds like a perfect study to kind of read up on.
Yeah.
I wonder, probably they're gonna have to look at maybe MMA too, like amateur MMA where they wear headgear, kind of put more of those, even some of those traditional martial arts, the point fighting where there are knockouts too. Like look
Yeah.
at the headgear versus non-headgear. I think once
Yeah.
they incorporate those in a new study, then it's gonna, because if you can get
Right.
the traditional martial artist behind you too, oh,
I
that
agree. I agree. I just think though, there's no sport where you're taking more head trauma
yeah,
than boxing. I mean,
yeah,
there's just no combat sport where you're standing in front of another guy for 12 rounds, whatever it is, punching each other exclusively in the head and in the stomach. I mean,
yeah,
at least with MMA, you can kick to the leg, you can grapple, you can submit the guy, even in kickboxing, you can kick to the leg, you can kick to the thigh, you can go to the body, you can teep to the chest, whatever it is. No, boxing is just, I mean, you're going to get hit in the head several times in a boxing match, and it's going to be for a sustained period of time. So for me, if it works for boxing, I mean, but I'm with you. I'd like to see it conducted in other sports as well, just to reinforce it.
yeah. And potentially, what I can do is I can just take the segment and I can just put it up too, because this is very important. The other thing
Yeah,
I forgot to mention that I'm sure a lot of your fighters will talk about too. When you have headgear, it changes your guard too, because now there's padding, so it doesn't stick to your face. Whether
that's true
here or
too.
here, right?
Yeah.
So then you're like, my hands are sort of hovering. They're not really touching my face.
Right,
So
right.
that also changes your defense too. So even if you wanted to be a smart defensive fighter, your hands are kind of here, right? That
Yeah,
in
yeah.
itself will mess up your game.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, you're also your movement, right? I mean, you got an extra inch, inch and a half, or whatever it is. You think you're getting out the way, and you're getting clipped.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
So
exactly, exactly. So obviously we have, there's gonna be Florida, and then there's gonna be California. What, I just have this crazy idea, which is obviously some of the fighters that they cover in Taiwan, some of them want to come to the U.S. to give a seminar. What if what
yeah,
did we get? Chilala, the Wing Chun fighter or something? We get him to fight in FightersRep just for once or something. Like, is it possible to do something? Or is that a little difficult because they're
oh
from
man,
another country?
no, it's super easy. You just
Okay.
come and get the medicals done, and we run it. I mean, we had, like especially on the amateur level. In the amateur level for the IKF, all you need is a physical, and you
Mm-hmm.
can jump in there. And
Mm-hmm.
the doctor at the show can literally do it at the weigh-in. Like that's
Mm.
how easy it is. So, we had a kid, like I told you, from Miami fly out. He'd never even been to California in his life,
Wow.
and he's actually of Jamaican descent. And he flew into California, got his physical done, and he fought in our main event. So it wouldn't be difficult at all, and it would definitely be something I would be open to, definitely, and I'd love to get to other countries and get other countries involved as well. I mean, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, that the reason I think about that is because some of the leagues I cover, they have a lot of people who want to fight for that league, but they're especially some of the German leagues, like they source a lot of talent from the immigrant community. So like there's a
Hmm.
lot of people from like Morocco and Libya and Turkey who are like, Jerry, can you give me a fight? So I would reach out to these German promotions, and they don't tell me how they select people, right? But if some of these people could come to the U.S., then I guess we
Yeah,
got George here who could potentially
yeah,
match you
yeah.
up.
Yeah, I mean, at this time, they would probably have to, pay for their way over here, unless they were
Of
like
course, yeah.
a big star or something. But I mean, if they can make it here, we can't really help with like the visa protocol or anything
Yeah,
at this time. But
exactly.
if they can make it here legally, then yeah, then absolutely, yeah. I mean, they can definitely fight for us, and I've always been interested in doing fights in the Middle East and in Asia and in Africa and Europe and everywhere else, but especially the Middle East. My family's from over there, and I'm seeing a lot of big fights starting to happen in places like Saudi Arabia and things like that, and the
Wow.
UAE, and the UFC did their Fight Island over there. So that's definitely something I would be really, really interested in doing at some point.
Yeah. I had a viewer who he's studying abroad in Lebanon, I think.
Oh,
And he
interesting.
was telling me, dude, there's taekwondo gyms and karate gyms everywhere. So it's like
Yeah.
a perspective I didn't know. Like you told me that boxing's really big there. And then from the viewer, he told me that taekwondo and karate is really big. So yeah, it's a big market that I think hasn't been fully tapped in its potential yet.
Yeah, and they're doing a good job. I mean, from what I heard, the Fury versus Ngannou event in Saudi was like really, really well done. Is
Wow.
what I was told. So, you know, they want they want to turn that place into a tourist's haven, and they want the big fights to happen over there. And good for them. I mean, they're building their economy. But, I wish
Mm-hmm.
we would. I wish our government would help us get behind. The combat sports and building the sports economy that much. I'll be honest with you. I've reached out to countless sponsors, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to get them on sometimes. So, I think over there the system's a bit different. They really incentivize businesses to get behind these sports, I believe, and I hope to have that sort of same support at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that can be the last topic of this conversation. What is your process like? If someone wanted to sponsor you, do they just reach out to
Yeah.
you? Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, they could just reach out to Fighters Rep on Instagram or on Facebook, or they can email me at info@fightersrep.com or george@fightersrep.com. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. If you send a message to the Instagram Fighters Rep, it'll eventually get to me. And yeah, and if they want to sponsor the fighters as well. I mean, I would love to create a situation where you could sponsor the show, and maybe there's a fighter that you really like. This is what I do. I try to convince the sponsor, why don't we give a little bit to this fighter? He can put your brand on his shorts or something like that. So, I'm always looking for ways to kind of help the fighters out too, especially the amateurs, because they're not making any money. So that's the best way to do it, I think.
Hmm. And is there any type of sponsor that so far has been really good about sponsoring fighters, or every show they kind of ask you? Is there something like
Yeah.
that right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, big shout out to, I have two main ones. One is Citizen Athlete Project. Big shout out to Ken Bromley of Citizen Athlete Project. He's got this program called Citizen Athletes Project. And what they basically do is they try to create like a mentor-mentee relationship, with people involved in the combat sports and sports communities and gyms and things like that to help young people along. You could definitely check them out. And of course, Ali Optimal Wellness, Majid Ali, big shout out to him. He does Eastern medicine and acupuncture, and he creates, he puts herbs together, and his kids actually fight. And he does a lot of training as well. He's in incredible shape for his age, for any age. If I'm being honest with you, he's trained in combat as well, and he's been supporting me from the very beginning, pretty much. So big thank you to those two sponsors. But that's pretty much it. I've had a lot of others come and go, do kind of one-time thing, but this is something that's ongoing, and I'm looking for more support. One great way to support too is to join the channel. Join the channel.
Yeah.
That'll help me continue to grow. I mean, it's basically like a crowd-funded promotion at this point through the YouTube channel. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, um, this is kind of good because I thought about brands that I've worked with, right? And some of them potentially would really be down to at least get in touch with you. So I will. I was writing down as you were talking. I was
yeah,
writing down some people that I'll definitely send them your email, and I'll
I
just give them a
appreciate
heads
it.
up. So
I
even if
appreciate
it's
it. You
just
know
like
what?
they give it a shot, right? Who knows? They might like it, and then bam, it becomes a
Yeah,
continuous thing.
and I mean, we've got good viewership. I mean, we've got, views on, I mean, we've got Instagram videos that have broken 2 million
Yeah.
views. I mean, we get consistently, I mean, I want to say tens of thousands of views on everything we post on Instagram, and the YouTube channel's getting bigger. We're at about 12,000 subscribers now, I want to say, close to it, and 50,000 or 60,000 plus on Facebook. And So, we've got a pretty good reach, and I think the potential is endless,
Mm,
really.
yeah,
Look who we're working with. We're working with the best gyms in California. We're going to be working with the best gyms in Florida. We're producing, kids that are stars and selling tons of tickets. And it's just a matter of time, before this thing catches like wildfire onto the mainstream, and listen, you're in that state. I was living there for almost 9 years. It's the most populous state in the nation, right? We were the only kickboxing show with a pro license in the
yeah,
entire state of California.
yeah.
So, I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I think that's a great point to end on. And we'll definitely have a lot more talks. And I think in the future, George and I will collab in the live stream way too. So I'd even be down next time you guys, let's say, watch a UFC fight or something or anything. I'd be down to come on and then I can stream on mine too. And then bam, we can have, because your
would
live
be
show is
amazing.
awesome, and I sometimes tune in, and I just the time I reached out to you right before, I was like, dude, that was the time I really watched it. I was like, man, I could just, even if I didn't put it on the background, I could literally put it in the foreground and watch it for its entire live stream. You guys do a good job.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, my co-host Gary, we grew up together in Miami playing sports, and he's a big fight fan. And, I just feel like he's also kind of built to discuss this thing. He's got a gift of gab and a lot of charisma as well, and it's just a lot of fun to do it with him. We argue a lot, so it becomes hilarious,
Yeah.
and that's something people can tune in and watch every Monday, typically at 9 or 10 p.m. Eastern. So I appreciate you so much, Jerry. You're doing such a great job. Any way I could collaborate with you and help you, and you can help me, I'm always open to it.
Yeah, definitely. So for those of you watching, if I come to breakdowns and George Francis from Fighters Rep.